Good evening and welcome to the March 19th meeting of the Board of Selectmen. First, I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded and ask if there's anyone in the audience also recording. We have a representative of the Worcester Telegram who is making an audio recording, correct? Is there anyone else? Seeing none, could we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you, everyone, for being here. This is a public hearing for a proposed plastic bag ban bylaw. The purpose of the hearing is to solicit input and feedback from residents, businesses, and taxpayers on a proposed plastic bag ban law as presented to the Board of Selectmen on February 26, 2018. So this evening, Selectman La Liberty will do a brief presentation, 15 to 20 minutes on the issue. Then I will open it up to public comment. Just please wait till be recognized and then go up to the lectern once you're recognized. Mr. La Liberty, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I know everyone is anxious to come up and make comments and ask questions, so I'll try to go through it as quickly as I can. These are some of the negative effects. They've been up on the town site for a while now, so I won't go over them in detail. HDPE and LPDPE plastic bags are the same as far as we're concerned, so we won't go over the differences there. The negative effects of plastic bags, mainly marine environment, a threat to animal life. The plastic breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces, eventually becoming microplastics or nanoplastics that can store toxins. So when we talk about a plastic bag ban, we're talking about just the ban, not a ban plus a fee, which some communities have done. That was actually implemented in the state of California. They did a statewide ban. So what you saw there was a ban on plastic bags and then a fee on any bag that was given out by the retailer. In Massachusetts, to my knowledge, towns are not allowed to do that. Some cities have. That's been done in Cambridge and Boston, but that's not in this bylaw here. These are just some of the reasons that they've become popular. By the year 2050, there's expected to be more plastic in the ocean than fish by weight. So the need to cut down on plastic in any way is a large environmental concern. The U.S. uses about 12 million barrels of oil every year on plastic bags. And I think it's about 2 billion plastic bags, that's billion with a B, from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts every year. The average use of a plastic bag is about 12 minutes. And that's including people that reuse the bags because they're used for such a short time. Most of the bags are used for such a short time that it does come out to 12 minutes on average. Already covered that. They don't accumulate. They've been implemented in about 75 countries to some extent worldwide. It's been a global push. The UN has encouraged countries to limit their plastic production because of its threat to the oceans. In the United States, California and Hawaii have both implemented statewide bans. California was done by statewide ballot. Hawaii was done county by county, but every county did ban the plastic bags. In Massachusetts, we have 61 communities that have already done it. I've read the bylaws for 60 of them when drafting this one and talked to representatives from a number of those communities to see what the problems were with implementing it, why they implemented it, and how things went. The most recent addition is the city of Boston. So the potential economic impacts of the plastic bags you can see in 3 areas: residents or consumers, retailers, and then municipal governments. As far as consumers go, you're looking at if the plastic bags are banned, people will have to probably bring reusable bags. That's the best option for the environment. Paper is a better option or a better alternative to plastic, but unfortunately, it's still not the best. The best would be a reusable bag that you can use for as many times as you can. Those would cost money. In San Jose, they did a study, excuse me, That was a ban plus a fee, but it cost the average household about $7.68 the first year that it was implemented, and that was buying reusable bags and paying the fee when they forgot to bring a bag. Again, the bylaw that we're considering doesn't have a fee, but people would be required to purchase reusable bags. The other economic theory that I read about is customers would have to pay an increase on prices from goods from stores that now have to switch over to paper. And the reasoning for that is that paper is more expensive. It's more expensive to make because, well, one of the reasons is that it's larger, so it takes up more space. You can't ship as many at a time as you can with plastic. I've talked to members of the community, or I've been shopping in Shrewsbury. I haven't noticed a price increase. I go to UMass Amherst, so I'm actually shopping in Amherst a lot. I haven't seen a significant increase, but that's not a very good study of it. I couldn't find a really good study that looked at price increases or anything like that. Unfortunately, it just wasn't available. So the best I could do was personal experience and talking to representatives from Shrewsbury and the Amherst Board of Selectmen and Economic Development Director, who said that they haven't seen any price increases that would be noticeable. Municipal governments, from everyone that I've talked to, they haven't seen a significant or a significant increase in costs from implementing a plastic bag ban. If anything, the theory has gone that they would save money. That's probably more true with cities like New York, LA County. They're shipping less in solid waste because there's less being thrown away. Also, if plastic bags have become clogged in drainage systems, they've saved money on cleanup efforts. So that's really probably not applicable to Auburn, since we haven't had a problem with the plastic bags clogging the drainage system. You would see a decrease in the amount of solid waste that was, I don't know how sizable it would be, because I don't know how many plastic bags are used specifically in Auburn. You can do an estimate, though. It's about 1,500 per household, according to a study that was done by the New York State Legislature. So, and then additional, Auburn has traffic, obviously. I think our daytime population almost goes up to 30,000, so we have significantly more people coming through Auburn and going to retailers here. The Economic Development Director in Amherst is someone that I interviewed. He was one of the first people that I talked to. He noted that retailers looking to come to Amherst really didn't question it. Amherst has done a couple of other things, though. They've also banned styrofoam and required that any kind of takeout thing has to be biodegradable. So they did get complaints from restaurants because of that. So, but the plastic bags ban itself hasn't been an issue. They also haven't seen many an increase in municipal costs from it. They did say that it took up some time initially. Unfortunately, when Amherst implemented the bag ban, they did it by citizen petition, not through the Board of Selectmen, like we're trying to do here. So what they saw is a lot of confusion when it happened on their end and on the retailer's end, because no one really knew what they were doing. These are just some stats on what cities have saved. Again, Auburn can't compare to San Jose or New York City, but this just gives you an idea of what cities have saved based on the reduction in solid waste. So this would actually go over, the Equinox Center in California did a study a few years ago where they found that the average plastic bag is about 1 cent. The average paper bag is about 15 cents. So that's a pretty significant increase from switching over. But the study done by the New York State Legislature put the cost a little bit closer at, what do we have, 5 cents a paper bag and 6 cents, 5 to 6 cents, and then 7 cents to 10 cents if it has a handle. Of course, whether or not it has a handle would be totally up to the retailer. And then they also had 1 cent to 1.5 cents per plastic bag. One thing that they found, though, the Equinox Center from a few years ago, is you're not just seeing an increase in the paper bags that are going up, and I don't know if you guys can really see this, this graph off to the side, but you see that there's a major increase in people not using a bag at all, just walking out carrying their goods, or using a reusable bag. And a reusable bag would actually be the best case scenario for a retailer. When I talk to or interview people at Shaw's, they're encouraging people to use the reusable bags and to buy reusable bags because they're not spending money to give that person a bag. So that's been something that they've been pushing. So you see that there also is, it's not just plastic to paper. People would be using other sources that wouldn't cost the retailers. There was one study, the National Center for Policy Analysis, which showed a 3.3% decrease in sales inside a plastic bag zone in California, and then a 3.4% increase in sales outside of the plastic bag zone area. The study hasn't been repeated, and there wasn't an attempt to further that study to prove a causation there. It was about 3% of retailers that were surveyed in that. That's the only study I've found that's attempted to answer the question about whether or not you see a decrease in sales after a plastic bag ban goes into effect. And this can't be researched any further because, of course, California, I think 2 years after the study was done, did the ban statewide. So unless they leave California, there isn't another option. This is just a map to give you an idea of where the plastic bag bans have happened in Massachusetts. The green are proposed, so those have either been proposed to the Board of Selectmen and turned down, proposed to by citizen petition to town meeting and been rejected, or been proposed and passed and are now waiting to be implemented or approved by the Attorney General. This is as of February 6th, I want to say. Actually, it might be January 6th. So I don't know if it's changed, but it should be fairly accurate. Reds are the approved ban already going into effect sometime soon, if not already. You can see Boston's on the list. There are 3 other towns in Worcester County that have done it. I already talked about this. Athol, Grafton, and Shrewsbury are the towns in Worcester County. In 2016, the Massachusetts legislature did propose a statewide ban that would have been attached to the budget. It passed the Senate but failed in the House. That would only have applied to larger stores, about 3,000 square feet. Most recently, a joint committee approved a second bill. This one would apply to all retailers throughout the Commonwealth and would go into effect in August of 2019. So the Commonwealth seems to be moving in the direction anyway. Every year, more and more towns implement these kinds of bans, and this is the second attempt now to do it at the statewide level through the legislature. So this I'll go quickly through, but there's some concern about senior citizens using paper bags instead of the plastic bags with handles. The best option would be to use a reusable bag which has a handle, and you can put however much in there you're comfortable with. Of course, you would have to buy those bags. But this looks at every town that has implemented a plastic bag ban in the Commonwealth. Auburn's in gray here, so you can see we're pretty close to the center, actually. We're even below the median for towns that have implemented a plastic bag ban, so we're younger on average than most towns that have implemented them. Household income, again, Auburn's fairly close to the center. We're a little bit below the average, but yeah, the average is 86,000, Auburn's is 74,000. Property value is where you see a significant difference between the average community in Massachusetts that has implemented a plastic bag ban and Auburn. There are those that are less, but Auburn is towards the tail end there. It's about 2 standard deviations from the mean. So this right here goes into the retail section of in Auburn, our retail base. So about 24% of jobs in Auburn are from retail trade. So that's pretty sizable. In fact, It's one of the largest, and if I just go to this slide really quickly, you can see that these are some of the towns or cities that have implemented them that I've tried to find. Reading is the next closest at, actually, well, surpasses us at 27%. Sudbury at 26% also, but it's just those two that I was able to find. Other than that, the next closest is Hamilton at 20%, and that's from 2000, so that's before the crash in 2008. So Auburn is significantly above the communities that have implemented plastic bag bans as far as jobs in retail. The next closest community that you can find and compare us to is Shrewsbury, which has implemented a plastic bag ban. They're at about 18.85%, and this is including wholesale retail and just retail trade. So about 19%. Of the 14 largest retail or employers in Auburn, 4 of them are in retail. So because of that, I specifically asked economic development directors that I've talked to and director of health in Amherst, because I was able to interview several people in Amherst. They all said that they haven't seen any direct conflict from the retailers. They haven't seen any dramatic decrease in sales or heard any complaints of that or a significant increase in costs. I have talked to one business in Shrewsbury that noted that there was a slight increase in their costs when they switched over. It's owned by someone who operates a store both in Shrewsbury and in Auburn. They noticed the increase in cost, but they had no decrease in sales whatsoever. So as far as enforcement goes, from 60 of the 61 communities, I didn't use Stockbridge because I couldn't find their bylaw very easily. But I did do the other 60, and that was a great read. I definitely recommend it if you're trying to sleep. You have, most of it is done by the Board of Health, and if anything else, the Board of Health and then another committee or a mixture of committees. So you see 40% from the Board of Health or a Board of Health designee. And then an additional 17% is the Board of Health, and then also the police as an enforcement agent. Auburn's bylaw does not include the police, it would just be the Board of Health as the enforcing agent. 10% did town administration, either through town manager or town administrator. And then the 33% that's other could be a mix of a number of different boards. Or DPW is a popular one. Some did the Board of Selectmen or Board of Aldermen, whatever they happen to have. Others had an environmental committee that took care of it, or an environmental commissioner that did it. So that really could be anything or any mixture of them. All right, so first offense. If there's a bylaw, then there has to be a punishment if it's violated. So what the first offense did is most communities have, 62% of the communities have had a warning for a first offense. Auburn's also does just a warning for the first offense. The next most common was a $50 fine. And then after that, you see unspecified, which could mean that it's just up to the enforcing agent, whoever that happens to be. There's usually a limit, and I can't go above this certain number, but ultimately it's up to them what that fine is. What Auburn's bylaw does, there are 12 other communities that have done this, is they put a specified time in between the first offense and a second offense, a charge that you can be given. So Auburn's is about 15 days. So if a retailer violates it, it's probably on accident. I can't see anyone purposely violating the bylaw and distributing plastic bags anyway. So they'd be given a written warning, and then for 15 days, they can either apply for another extension or for an extension, or switch over to paper bags before they're given a second offense. So for a second offense, 12 towns do have that period of time. They range from 7 days to 30 days. For a second offense, the most common is a $50 fine, followed by a $100 fine, unspecified again. 5% of communities, the smallest amount, does a $25 fine. That's what Auburn went with, or what I went with for the bylaw that I've proposed. Obviously, we haven't gone with anything yet. But the bylaw that I've proposed, and I use that number because it's, I think, the most fair. Again, if a retailer is doing this, I really don't see it as on purpose, and there really shouldn't be a strict punishment there. And that's my opinion. Third offense, and all subsequent offenses is usually how the bylaws went. Some bylaws would specify if there's a fourth offense, but the majority of them said third offense and all subsequent offenses. So the most common for this was a $100 fine. Second, $200 fine, and then again, unspecified. So the reason you're seeing that the unspecified number is going up is because some communities will say first amount this much, second amount this much, third up to the enforcing agent, or first offense, this much has to be paid, second offense up to the enforcing agent. So because there's so much variation in the towns. Auburn's would do a $50 fine. And then that 5% that does a $300 fine, I believe, is Amherst and maybe Cambridge that say up to $300. But they have minimums of $100 and $200 for the first and second. So deferments. So a number of communities have done this, 21 actually, out of the 61 in Massachusetts, offer a deferment for a retailer if they need additional time to either wear down the plastic bags that they already have, or switch over to paper, or if it would be too financially costly for them to actually switch at that time. The deferments range from 6 months to 2 years. Some communities didn't put a limit, they left it entirely up to the Board of Health. So this just breaks it down. 11 towns did it for 6 months, 6 towns for a year, 3 towns for 2 years, and 1 town left it up to the enforcing agent and didn't put a limit on it at all. And I forget which town that was. Oh, I'll go back. The Auburn bylaw that's been proposed has an option for up to 3 deferments. Each is a period of 6 months. The current draft of the bylaw states that you have 6 months from passage. So that's every business would have 6 months. Any that needed an additional and had to apply would apply to the Board of Health. It would be up to the Board of Health ultimately whether or not to grant the extension or the deferment. So that would be up to a year after its passage. And then they have the option for an additional 2 6-month periods. So if it is possible that a retailer, if they were struggling, would get up to 2 years after this bylaw passed to actually start using plastic bags. And by then the state may have already passed legislation. Exemptions and extensions. Some communities, 8 in Massachusetts, have given specific either an exemption or an extension to a business that's under a certain size. So those were either 2,000, 3,000, or 8,000 square feet from those 8 communities. I think the most common was 3,000 square feet. So some communities gave an additional 3 months for businesses under 3,000 square feet. Some said that it didn't have to apply at all to businesses under 3,000 square feet. That's only 8 towns in Massachusetts. The current draft doesn't have one of those, an exemption or an extension. Board of Health concerns. I've met with the Board of Health to talk about some of the concerns, mainly this clause in the actual bill: all penalties shall be paid to the town clerk no later than 30 days, and if a retail establishment fails to pay, they're subject to closure by the Board of Health. The other concerns were the educational component, actually reaching out to retailers and letting them know what's going on and trying to educate and then enforce the bylaw. And I know we did get an email today that outlines the Board of Health concerns, so I won't go into any more detail on that. And that is the end. So now we can go over to questions, which I'm sure there will be plenty of.
Thank you, Mr. LaLiberty. So I'll now open it up to public comment. I will ask, as usual, for public comment, you limit your comments to 3 minutes. When you come up to the lectern, please give your name and address for the record. After we have public comment, I'll open it up to board discussion and also acknowledge what we have received by email and in the office. So who would like to go first? Okay, see a hand.
Hi, my name is Virginia Parent, not used to a mic, sorry. I work at the Worcester Chamber, and I am the Auburn Chamber affiliate for the board. And I am here on behalf to read a statement that they have written for this evening. The Auburn Chamber of Commerce wishes to express its strong concern with the proposal of a plastic bag ban and the cost and unanticipated consequences this will bring onto retail businesses in the town of Auburn. While we can understand the desire to reduce litter in our community, that policy would place local, family-owned businesses at a competitive disadvantage while competing against similar retailers in neighboring communities, as well as online sellers. It's not the manner in which to address the problem. With costs increasing on multiple fronts, healthcare, wages, insurance, just to name a few, there is only so much a retailer can pass along to the customer before the consumer feels the effects as well. However, the Board of Directors does recognize that Auburn is a green community and the issue of litter to be a serious environmental issue, and would pledge to support to work with the town administration to increase availability for recycling plastic bags, and would support the town's efforts to educate the citizens and residents' proper disposal to these bags so that they do not end up in our landfills for years to come, worse, polluting our waterways and environment. Thank you. And here is I should have practiced. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come up and give your name and address for the record. Excuse me.
My name is Chad Clark. I'm the owner at Sheldon's Harley Davidson here in Auburn. I'd like to read a statement here. I would like to express my strong opposition to the proposed plastic bag ban from the town of Auburn. While we are strong believers in general recycling and want to do our part to contribute to the green community, we would like to remind the Selectmen of some of the limitations that we, as franchisees, have to work with from our franchisors. Harley-Davidson's most important asset is the brand recognition, and they fight fiercely to protect it daily. Harley-Davidson has strong restrictions on who is authorized to print their logo on products in order to control the integrity of the brand. Have you ever seen the wording changed within the Bar and Shield logo? Some people change it to honor a fallen friend or family member. Some change the wording or shape to advertise an event they are hosting. These are all illegal trademark infringements that Harley-Davidson has to address on a daily basis in order to protect the integrity of the brand. Can you imagine what the logo would look like if 600 Harley-Davidson dealerships were permitted to get their own t-shirts printed or on anything else? More than likely, the image would vary and the quality products would not meet the standards of the customers who proudly wear them. Having said that, franchisees are not permitted to go out and choose where to get their merchandise and supplies from. For example, I cannot go to a place like Girton Graphics and have them print the Bar and Shield logo on anything legally. If that happened, both Girton Graphics and myself would be liable for trademark infringement. I would certainly lose the franchise and be held liable for damages to the brand. The simple answer is not to ban plastic bags or anything else that we are forced to purchase from our franchisor. I also would like to add that business and commerce is important to any community. We are proud to be in Auburn since 1998 and hope to stay here for many years to come. There are only 600 Harley-Davidson franchises in the United States, and Auburn has one of them, and we are in the top 20% nationwide. Consumers do not want to pay higher prices without getting direct value. So when increased costs associated with doing normal business are incurred, the costs will be passed on to the consumers by the businesses. Some may not be noticeable. This is called inflation, which is defined as a general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. I strongly urge you to reconsider your proposal given the limitations which many businesses have to adhere to and the ultimate cost to the consumer. The citizens of Auburn will be the ones who ultimately suffer from your proposal. So what I'm saying is we are bound by what our franchisors allow us. I just can't go to a plastic bag manufacturer and say, hey, print me some paper, or a bag manufacturer and print me on paper bags. I can't do that. I can only do what Harley Davidson allows me to do, and a lot of franchises operate that way. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Who would like to speak? Yes, please. Dick, can you pick that up? I'm sorry. Do you want to come sit up here to speak? Okay. We're happy to have you come up here.
We don't have a portable?
We don't have a portable. Yes.
I'll manage.
Future reference, we'll get.
Yeah, we need to get a portable.
Again, my name's Steve Herbert. I'm the owner of X-Fire Paintball and Airsoft. Next week, we'll celebrate our 20th year in Auburn. We use plastic bags, and I did take a look at the option of using paper, and I found a roughly comparable paper bag, and it was about 3 2/3 times the cost of a plastic bag. That was before I discovered when I read the actual proposal. The proposal requires that we print on the paper bag that it's recyclable and that it contain post-consumer paper, fiber. So that would increase the cost even more. So that's going to increase the cost a lot. Now, packaging really isn't an awful lot of cost for us, but it is an increased cost. I compete against other brick-and-mortar stores as well as online retailers. They don't have those costs. So other stores in Massachusetts as well as other states, my online competitors, do not have these costs. I think it's unfair to not have a level playing field when I have to compete against these other retailers. So this is giving retailers in Auburn an unfair cost. And I think that's something that you should consider in debating this proposal. As I said, it's just, this bylaw is just unenforceable against online retailers as well as retailers outside the town. The other fact about plastic bags versus paper bags is that just fundamentally the plastic bags are better. We have a variety of strange, odd-shaped products, and they just fit in a plastic bag much better. And finally, from a personal viewpoint, I live in Thompson. I happen to be actually a selectman in Thompson. On occasion, at the end of the workday, I'll need to do a little personal shopping. I frequently go to Shaw's. If I have to make a decision about shopping in the evening and I don't have a reusable bag with me, and Shaw's isn't going to be available for me because I have to buy a reusable bag when I go there, I'll make another choice. I'll shop in another town. I think that's not what Auburn wants. So, again, just another something to consider. I think it's going to be a problem for the retailers in Auburn. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there someone else who would like to speak? Please.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Stuart Loosemore. Much like my colleague, Ms. Parent, I'm also from the Chamber of Commerce, where Virginia read the statement from the board. I was tasked with a handful of comments on the ordinance as it was drafted. I would like to provide those. The ordinance talks about potential for compostable bags and compostable standards. Problem from my understanding is compostable still needs to be put to a municipal or an industrial composting facility. So you run into a very similar problem that you do with the plastic bags that can't be put in your single stream recycle, have to be brought and put through a separate stream to be broken down because they are petroleum based. Your compostable bags would have the same issue. You would need to find a way to put them into a proper waste recycle stream so that they're brought to a proper facility to be composted. They are not backyard biodegradable. You don't just get to throw them in your own waste heap in your backyard and have them break down. They're designed and implemented to be broken down in an industrial or a municipal facility. The ordinance talks about plastic bags with or without handles. I believe that creates an issue. There is a section later on in the ordinance that talks about food bags, plastic bags that are at a grocery store that you can put your produce in, meat, chicken, loose items like fruits, vegetables. You're going to come into a problem without differentiating between a point of sale bag with handles and one that's also used within a retail establishment. Also, there's no build out regarding to garment bags. So if you went to a Macy's and bought a suit, I think I even bought this one at the Macy's in Auburn. What about the plastic bag that goes over that? Is that come under the ban because Macy's would be a retailer? They would be using a plastic bag at the point of resale. There's also dry cleaning bags, newspaper bags. A lot of newspapers are put in a plastic bag either when purchasing or home delivery, as well as pharmacy. A lot of pharmacies, when someone goes in and buys a prescription, they put it in some form of bag. Some use paper, some use plastic. The bag is primarily used to help the consumer disguise what's in the bag for HIPAA purposes of protecting your own personal health information. So that's something else to consider. What impact is that going to have on CVS and other pharmacies in town? There's a requirement of the retailers posting or telling people how to properly clean the reusable bag if they're selling reusable bags. I'd be open to Mr. LaLiberty correcting me, but the ordinances I've seen, I haven't seen that in another community, and it just adds another level of something that the retailer has to do as part of this ordinance. Then there's also the general, this is an increased cost. Whether or not, as has been mentioned by some of the other businesses, it's a drastic cost or one that they readily pass on or don't, it's an increased cost for the businesses. There was also a slide that discussed a 3.4% increase in sales outside of the plastic bag zone, as opposed to a 3.3% decrease inside the zone. And while there may not have been additional research, to me that's a highlight. There's a problem with implementing these plastic bag bans. Another question would be whether or not you're going to specifically state an exclusion for a restaurant or food establishment, especially one that does predominantly takeout. While some may not feel that falls under the traditional retail definition, that again comes to an issue and a problem of whether or not those retailers, those stores are going to be required to use a plastic bag as well. And my one final would be, or sorry, two final. In one of the sections that discusses regulations, section 3, it talks, item A, subset 2, prevent a retail establishment from using product bags as defined in section 3, and then the comment below that, item B, as defined in section 3, I think those are meant to say section 2. So again, I'm not trying to nitpick, but these are things that, without redrafting and addressing, would cause problems if the ban moved forward. And my final point would be, there was mention too of the statewide ban. The statewide ban in its current language has said it will oversee and supersede and override all municipal ordinances that were passed prior to its adoption. So where the legislative session still has through the end of July to do something in a formal session setting, and through the end of the year to pass legislation through the informal process, I would hate to see the town expend resources significant resources, time, and effort to put something into effect that's then superseded by the state passing a statewide ban. There is also the consideration, as Mr. Liberty pointed out, all of the communities are all just a little different. So you do have some of the retailers here are single retailers. You have some that are in multiple communities. It just becomes another logistic nightmare for them to figure out how store A complies with this community, store B complies with this community. Whereas if the state does do a statewide ban, there is some safety and uniformity that all communities would be treated the same. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak tonight? Yes, please, come up.
My name is Tim Ondradonk, and I'm a resident of Auburn. And I just want to say that I'm against the ban because I feel the citizens of Auburn are well-informed, and we should be able to make our own decision when we go shopping. And like this gentleman said about Shaw's, if I'm running low on plastic bags at home, because I reuse them, and I recycle a lot, and I reuse my plastic bags around the house, in the car, and for lunch, and at work. If I'm running low and I need to get some, I'll probably go to a neighboring town such as Oxford to go to Market Basket or Price Chopper if they still have them available. So I see me not shopping locally if I need to get more bags. And I don't think we should be pressured by neighboring communities just to follow suit with them. I think we should let our own residents make their decisions for themselves and have the choice and not be forced by bylaws. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Please, come on up.
Good evening, board members and fellow residents. My name is Erica Sullivan. I reside at 45 Barnes Street here in Auburn. I'm also the owner and operator of Erica Sullivan Realty Group, located at 889 Southbridge Street, also here in Auburn. I have a couple of questions that in the business that I'm in, I'm kind of concerned with. The first thing is, I think we're all well aware that we have millions of dollars of commercial real estate available here in Auburn that we're trying to fill. My question is, the communities that established the plastic bag ban, how were they affected in the filling of their available commercial spaces? Did that affect that? Was that something that was looked into? That would be a concern. One area that comes to mind is the several $million that we have been trying to find a resident for on the Mass Pike on-ramp. That would be one example. Several throughout the town as well. My other question would be how this would affect the town's overhead if we need people to uphold the bylaw, such as members of the Board of Health. That would probably increase their work hours and therefore require additional personnel. How would that affect the town's overhead in trying to compensate for that needed work time and hours? So those would be questions that I would have. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Anyone else? No one else wants to speak? Please come up to the lectern.
Good evening, Alan Rafferty, 18 Paul Street. I hope I am not the only one who's going to speak in favor of the ban tonight. I hope there's someone else here. There aren't a whole lot of residents here. It's mostly businessmen. So I'm not sure how well we advertised this open hearing to the general public. Madam Chairwoman, first let me state that the evidence that has been previously given by Selectman Liberty proves without a doubt that plastic bags should be banned. If you are a progressive of any kind or an environmentalist, you need to take a stand on this issue that is wreaking havoc not only on our environment but on our health. Nanoparticles that come from plastic bags and dioxins that come from the incineration of plastic bags are outright unhealthy, especially to children. I'm disappointed that the current Board of Selectmen will not take a stand on this issue tonight and instead hold a public hearing after the warrant for town meeting has been closed. That was my understanding. Town meeting will not be given a chance to vote on this issue, so all you businessmen really don't have to worry for now. Despite the fact that other progressive communities have banned bags or allowed a vote on this issue, despite the fact that the Democratic state legislature is working on bills that ban this health hazard, Auburn selectmen have gone silent on this issue by not proposing a bylaw for town meeting to vote on. Perhaps it is because an election is coming and the selectmen have chosen to duck and cover. If I am wrong, then let the Board of Selectmen speak tonight and take a stand on this issue, like your fellow Democrats in the legislature are currently doing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yes.
Good evening, Wayne Page, 90 Old Common Road. I am really hard to settle on which way to go on this issue. And I came tonight to listen to more so I could get it straightened out in my own head. But I don't always agree with the Board of Selectmen, per se, but I would like to say this was a public hearing, and this is for the people and the Board of Selectmen, so everybody gets the information they need to make their own decision of what they're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else wants to speak? Okay. I'll now open it up to board comment. Does anyone have anything? Mr. Liberty.
So I'll just try to answer some of the questions that were asked specifically. As far as communities filling empty space, that was a question that I specifically asked the Economic Development Director in Amherst and Natick. And the responses I got from both of them were they didn't have problems where retailers were coming in and saying that that was going to be an issue. If they were already looking to go there, that wasn't going to be a deal breaker. Amherst, what they said specifically is they had problems convincing some restaurants to move in because of their styrofoam ban. Those were restaurants too, had no problem with the plastic bag ban. There were alternatives that they could be used, paper and such. Their concern was using a biodegradable container instead of a styrofoam container. And I've gone to restaurants in Amherst, and when you have takeout, they do have biodegradable containers that they give you at the end instead of a plastic bag or styrofoam. But their concerns were with styrofoam, everyone that they talked to, not with plastic bags. How would it affect overhead? After our last meeting, I went back and I talked to the Amherst Director of Health, again, just to be sure. They had incorporated the checks in with their biannual checks of retailers anyway. So they didn't see an increase there. The only increase in man hours that they saw, because again, they're only checking twice a year, which they would do anyway, and just incorporating that extra second to check the bags, which they said was pretty quick. And then on top of that, they would only specifically go out and look at a business if they got a report. They said that they didn't get many reports because most retailers were keeping up and staying with the bag ban. The only additional time was spent when it first took effect. Again, what they had done in Amherst and not doing here was it was done by citizen petition. So the Board of Health didn't see it until town meeting passed it. The Board of Selectmen saw it going to town meeting, but they didn't start looking into enforcement until after town meeting had passed it. So from that point, they had however long, and I have Amherst's in here somewhere, however long they gave retailers until it went into effect. And they had to scramble to look into enforcement. If the Board of Selectmen goes forward with it, I would be certainly willing to go around to retailers like I've already done, and try to communicate with them how to best go forward following the regulations.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Holstrom.
It's unfortunate that I wasn't here to see the last presentation. I did see it on the TV, and I had a chance to see a little bit of this presentation tonight, and thank you, Mr. LaLiberty, for that. Yes, the election is coming up. I am on the ballot for re-election, but there is no timetable on this, and so the duck and cover routine, I don't buy, but thank you. I believe that right now, with the people we have in the room tonight, I've heard a few different pieces of information that I wouldn't have recognized otherwise, wouldn't have heard of, and I think it would be irresponsible of me to make a decision tonight, right in front of you, with 20 or 30 people in this room, and 20 or 30 people that we've had responses from. The town has over 16,000 people, and I'm ready to listen some more. And so I'm not ready to make a decision one way or another. I want to hear some more information. I want to hear from you. And I think this information tonight that's been presented, I'll have a chance to go back and research. And I'm going to take my time and make this decision because it's going to affect us as residents, because those costs may go up because of, and I say may because I don't know, but the paper will be more expensive. My folks used to run a business, and it was paper goods that they ran. They never ran plastics, and it was expensive to run paper. And if you had a box that you were using and you could bring down, put it in the box. They didn't want the extra paper because they didn't want to pay the extra expense. And that's how it worked. And right now, the times have changed. The plastic is out there. It's pretty convenient for a lot of people to use back and forth for the market. 12 minutes of use for a plastic bag. I don't know how that ever came up, but I know I use plastic bags around the house. There's plastic bags sometimes running across my lawn. So I go and I pick them up and we put them away and, well, do what we can with them to put them in the trash. But I am waiting to hear more on what the public has to say, because businesses are also going to be affected by this, and their costs are going to go up. And as you've heard here tonight, there may be some residents that if they're not giving you plastic bags, they're going elsewhere. And not only that, if you have businesses in town that are not just local mom and pop shops, local residence owners, you're going to have some corporate people like Harley-Davidson, and Harley-Davidson's going to have to move that expense off to their other companies. It's a kind of a snowball effect, and everybody's going to be affected by going up prices. And from what I'm hearing tonight from Mr. Loosemore and the state, that their legislation is being proposed. And anything that the state does come up with is going to supersede anything that the local towns and cities are doing. Let's take the time, let's take a look at it. And like I say, we're not under the gun. There's no schedule for any of this. I appreciate all the research and work that has been done on this, but the ball hasn't dropped yet. So let's take a look at it some more, see what the state says, and let's go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holstrom. Mr. Carpenter, did you want to add anything?
Yes, I do, because we specifically, when this was first presented, which was sometime in August, as a board voted specifically that this was research and come back to the board. It was not intended for a draft bylaw to be done. It was meant as a board project, and that's what it is. As for suggestions that I don't know what Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian has anything to do with a nonpartisan board, but this is the second time I've heard that because someone might or might not be registered as something, that they obviously must conform to whatever that party's image is to those people who may or may not be a member of that party. So I have no idea what my colleagues' registration is, nor do I care. What I care about is that they work hard and that they're working for our community. So I would expect that we put this irrational and unnecessarily divisive comment about Republicans, Democrats, whatever you happen to be. It doesn't matter. You're a resident of the town of Auburn, and we want to hear from you one way or the other. So at that meeting, I said quite clearly, so if I didn't take a stand at that time to that person's hearing, I said I was not in favor for two reasons. One, what I just said. This was a report to the board, not to come before town meeting. It was a report. That was the vote. That's what we were expecting, not what we got. Second of all, the legislature is acting, and it would be wasteful of our time and efforts and taxpayer dollars to presume to supersede the legislature when, as we know, they have pretty big shoes, and they actually rule the whole Commonwealth. We just have a small town to worry about. So I want to hear from the legislature, because I do think, and I said this at the time in August, you know, let's see if we can get other communities or other areas around us to sign on. And I know Mr. Liberty did say that there were some citizen groups from other communities that were pursuing this. So he has done a great job. I appreciate all of his hard work, and I can see from the depth of the information that he's provided us that he's considered a lot of the options and a lot of the unintended consequences that the business community may face. However, again, it was a report to the board, and then we were going to take action. So it's not taking a stand, it's we voted, that's where we're at. And 3 or 4 weeks ago, we said that we weren't going to support bringing this before town meeting for the very reasons that we just said. So I think every member up here has expressed themselves for the public to understand, and we have gotten a lot of information. We've got a lot of feedback from the public, both pro and con. And we also have to think about how other people shop. You know, if you're somebody who has a mobility issue, it may not be so easy to use a reusable bag. If you're on the shopping van that the senior center runs, and currently you only have 2 bags that you can squish in with you, this may not be the answer for you. So we do need to look at alternatives, but I don't think that anybody is gaining by making these divisive comments, which, you know, that's not Auburn. The people who are here, whether they're in business or they're residents, have all made a substantial investment in the community. So whether they, you know, happen to sleep here at night or they don't, they're still us, and they still contribute a hell of a lot to the town, you know, on a lot of issues. So I think we need to respect the people who come here, who are, whether they be business owners, whether they be residents and business owners, or a combination of all. You know, we want to hear from you. We don't want people to feel as if they're being shamed because, oh gosh, they own a business, or they're just a resident, or whatever divisive or impolite comment you choose to make. So let's just go forward in a positive way, and let's see what the legislature does, and let's see what more information we can gather.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. So I just want to talk a little bit about the process since it was brought up. We did authorize Mr. LaLiberty to do a study and bring it back to the board, and you did yeoman's work, and thank you for that. You brought us back a lot of information. As Mr. Carpenter stated, we weren't prepared to have a bylaw prepared. There was no input from the Board of Selectmen or review. We have a draft bylaw that if we do move forward, we can look at that and take it from there. Regarding the holding the hearing after the warrant closed, I had a conversation with Mr. LaLiberty. He knew that the Board of Selectmen was receiving this on a Thursday in our packet with no public input. The meeting was on Monday evening, the following Monday evening, with an expectation that we take a vote. And in my conversation with Mr. LaLiberty, he understood that it was a short time frame. He had 6 months, and we had a matter of days. And he stated to me at that time it was his hope to get it on the fall town meeting warrant. So I just wanted to clarify that. We've had input from residents here. We've had input from residents via email. A couple residents have dropped off letters, but over the last several days, I've heard from people who said, what's this about a plastic bag ban? Like, they didn't have enough information. So clearly, as Mr. Rafferty pointed out, with a room of maybe 20 people, we need to do a better job getting the information out. Well, social media is a wonderful thing. A lot of people are not on social media, so they don't have that information. Again, that's why we need to take this slowly, solicit input, like we did with a potential dog park, potential purchase of 61A land. We held public hearings, we kept them open, and we allowed public input. We took everything that people said into consideration, we closed the hearing, and we took an informed vote on that. This has just started. This will not, if it goes forward, and again, we've had great information. There are significant concerns with having plastic bags in the environment. This will not make it to the warrant now until the fall town meeting. I would suggest that we continue seeking input. We have additional input, although Mr. LaLiberty went to all of these meetings. I think it's time that we invite those people in and hear, so all members can hear and ask their own questions. Mr. LaLiberty did exactly what we asked him to, with the exception of writing the bylaw, which we appreciate. He brought us back information to begin the process, and that's what we're doing here tonight. Unless the board intends on voting differently, that is my hope, that we continue to have input, seek input, and continue to seek other ways that we can get information out to residents, businesses, and all interested parties so that we can make an informed vote. Does anyone have anything else? Mr. LaLiberty?
I just wanted to add that in 2016, when Brookline was considering this plastic bag ban, there was also a bill in the legislature at the same time. What Brookline did was they amended their bylaw to be closer to, their proposed bylaw to be closer to what the state was considering to go in line with it. What ended up happening is the legislature didn't pass it. At the time, I think there were only 40 communities in the state that had done it. And Brookline has since now amended their bylaw back to what it was originally, because the state didn't end up passing it. So there's no guarantee one way or the other what the legislature will do, but this is a trend that we can see is going. In 2016, there were 40 communities, now there's 61, including the state's capital. So we've added communities, and the legislature's now on its second proposal.
Thank you. Is there anything else from board members?
No.
So I don't know what the board is inclined to do, but I think it would be best to make a motion to keep the hearing open and continue to solicit public comment. I don't believe we have to set a date specific, and we can notify the public when we actually hold any meeting to take any potential vote.
I make a motion that we leave that, the hearing open
Is there a
till
second?
such time that we have further information that we can present and send out to the public.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion?
So
Mr. LaLiberty?
if we leave it open now, we don't know when we'll have another public hearing and allow residents to come in and comment on their thoughts, or when we might have a vote.
No, I think we can leave it on the agenda as a tabled item, and we can continue to have discussion on it. And if we schedule a Board of Selectmen meeting and it's under tabled items, we can have a discussion to see if we received any input, if we have a discussion as to how we want to get information out there other than social media, and we can take a vote anytime because it will now be a tabled item. Any further discussion on the motion? Mr. Carpenter?
I would just say that if people do have something to share, we do have public comment at the beginning and end of every meeting. So even if we don't have a formal hearing, you can certainly come in and talk to us for 3 minutes and share your ideas between now and then. So there is an opportunity, and if we get more information, I'm certainly open to having a special meeting such as tonight, and let's hear some more.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Holstrom?
Through the chairman, I think we still have plenty of time to hear from the public, and I think it would be irresponsible of us to make any kind of quick decisions. We haven't dropped the ball, like I've mentioned. We have the fall town meeting. If it is brought to that meeting, we can have more information coming forward, and as Mr. Carpenter said, we're going to leave it open and come forward with public comments, but if we get overabundance because of our newspaper publicity on this issue, we'll have more information coming forward, and will be presented, and we'll have another open hearing here and just continue what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holstrom. And I'll also mention that Mr. Berthium couldn't be here this evening, and I'm sure that he would appreciate the opportunity to watch this meeting in replay and make his own comments. So if there's nothing else, I'll call the
One
Mr.
last
Carpenter.
thing.
Go ahead.
I have spoken to members of the public, and some have suggested that we have a open question on a ballot question on this subject. So I think it'd be interesting to hear from those who haven't, or those who have contributed already, whether they think a ballot question is something they're interested in or they're not, you know. That way, as Mr. Holstrom points out, we could get a broader cross-section of the town speaking their mind. So that would be interesting.
And we can get that information as well, the timeline. So is there anything else from board members? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a unanimous vote. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening, and this matter will be continued. It will be a tabled item on the agenda, but we will not be taking a vote unless the public is notified.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.